Good morning. Welcome to The Old School, a podcast on issues facing the contemporary education system here in the United States. Sometimes comparing it to other school systems, sometimes not. Checking out its foibles, its successes, its failures, its systemic problems that it deals with. All of it in one entertaining, breezy 30 to 45 minute episodes. Good morning, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Oh, Mr. Miller. That was a nice introduction. And I think we should keep it positive today. You know, we like to pick things apart and say that maybe things are going really well and we need to tout it.
I have an advantage on keeping it positive. Do you know what I just ate?
No, I don't really. I have zero interest.
No. Stay with me here. I just had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It is Americana. It is childhood. It is everything that is right, good, and wholesome in this world. And I've just consumed such sandwich. I can't help but think I can't help but be positive right now.
So you're setting me up because you think I'm grumpy and I'm going to say that I don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
You probably don't.
No. Well, no, I've eaten my share. Don't get me wrong. It used to be part of the school lunch along with some Cheetos and what do you call it? A hostess Twinkie. That's when I was in school. That was the lunch. Yeah. Those three things, they paired well together, all three. And I didn't get a note in my lunch bag from my mother, but I did get the hostess Twinkie, so that was pretty good. And sometimes hostess cupcakes.
She didn't send a note with you that says, "I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job. No, I love you."
There was no note. There was sometimes I got a ho-ho. And I thought that was pretty funny.
As a young child, you thought that was funny?
Yeah. No.
What upbringing did you have?
But no. Since then, I've kind of changed my ways as far as processed sugar, and I actually looked at. I mean, you read the label and it says strawberry preserves. So you think it's basically just strawberries and that's it, but it's really strawberries dunked in sugar, and it has a real high level of processed sugar. The content is probably, one sandwich is about 3 or 4 days worth of that.
There's a scene in The Odd Couple where Felix bemoaned the fact that there was a sandwich that had mold on it in the refrigerator, and Oscar asked him, "What are you, a health nut?" And this, I can't help but think you're venturing into the same territory.
No, it's not going to eat.
You got to get yourself high grade preserves. And I'm talking like bon maman, that kind of level of sophistication and tastiness. That's a great pairing of some natural, creamy Jif peanut butter. There you go. You got it.
So you're talking bone. What were you saying?
Bon maman. That's the French fancy schmancy preserves.
Okay. Well, but then you end up with Jif after all that. I mean, that seems a little odd.
Nothing wrong with Jif.
We get the Jif that's all natural.
That's what I'm talking about. All natural, creamy.
That's really, that's quite good. The other stuff I can't eat. But the creamy Jif, I'll give you that.
Now, this is like one of the few exceptions, because I'm a big believer in the biblical axiom to set aside childish things as you get older. Bill Maher talks about the growing list of things that only kids used to do, but now adults are doing it for some reason because we've been infantilized. But peanut butter and jelly is like one of the few holdovers that I still give great credence to.
Okay.
I'm just laying it out there.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. And I do think that they're really good if you have good bread.
Yes.
A wheat bread, a soft bread, not some firm bread. I don't think. I think it's part of the experience to have bread that is suitable.
You can't do pumpernickel with peanut butter. That's just it's subversive. But if you get a good sourdough or you get a good kind of maybe like a potato kind of bread. That's some good stuff there with peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, I think just plain old enriched white bread is the way that it's supposed to be.
Like Wonder
bread. There you go. Do they still make that?
I think so. But Anyway, well, guess what it is the season? 'Tis the season for, do you know?
Baseball? No. No,
Yes, well, it
you
is that true. Yes, I've already got a couple of games under my belt already, going to another game this week.
well,
But no, besides baseball.
end of the school year. We talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yes, well,
Which means testing, nothing but testing.
AP testing.
Okay, so you're not talking about state tests. Those are pretty. So AP is kind of the last thing. It's how the year ends. There are the preliminary tests, and then AP, and the important people start taking tests.
This is where the big dogs come out. This is where the big guns are unveiled. And so my students took it Friday morning. That was the time for the AP US history exam. And so it is basically the coda of an AP class is this exam that they have to take. And hopefully if they do well enough, they get university credit. It does call into question once more, as we sit here at the ass end of things, whether this is something that it was an endeavor worth doing, at the end of a course, in the way that you had to do it, the speed that you have to go. Is it something that is in keeping with our general philosophy as far as education goes?
Wow. The test itself and the fact that you have this build up to a test. And then I think it's telling that once the test is over, you're probably taking suggestions on which films they're going to see for the rest of the year. So there's something awkward about that you still have a couple of weeks of class left to do nothing because the test is over.
It does call into question. Excuse me, geez almighty.
You okay there?
It did. Well, yeah. I think it's that peanut butter and jelly sandwich I just ate.
Have to do the Heimlich maneuver over Zoom.
Can you do the Heimlich on yourself? Does that work?
Yeah, you take a chair, really a stand-up chair, and
just impale yourself
on it. Yeah, no, they're like videos of that, and it's serious stuff. Don't make fun of that here, Miller.
I'm not making fun of it.
People could be choking right now, and this could be a public service. I could have just saved people. Oh, the chair. Never thought of that.
So with our banter and witty repertoire, we could have both caused an incident and also given the solution on how to fix it.
That's true. They could be choking on it because they're laughing.
So the question is how does a good teacher handle the period from the tests to the end of the school year? Because you and I used to do an exchange. I'm still a part of it.
You're talking about a foreign exchange.
Foreign exchange.
Yeah. And
we would usually arrive at the school in Germany after the all-encompassing, incredibly stressful Abitur exam. And usually what our kids are experiencing in the forms of the German school system is after the stress of the exam is now over, the kids are walking a little lighter. There's maybe an extra spring in their step. Compare that with, so what is that, your recollection of what a senior level class was in Germany after the Abitur and how productive you thought it was? How closely did it align with our ideas compared to what we have typically here in the US after the major exam has passed?
I don't really know the answer to this, and we have German listeners who could probably tell us, but my thought is, they're pragmatic. They'd say, why would we have class at all? And they just wouldn't hold it. These are adults. They're 18, 19 years old. They certainly wouldn't just bring them to have seat time.
Right.
So my thought is that they do what we should do too, is just send them home. It's an open campus in most German schools, and it is kind of like in ours. So they should just not hold it, and they have as opposed to the film fest or the idea of let's have the kids teach each other, come up with a little topic and, who are we kidding? The test is over. But I guess my point is that there's still something about it building to this test as opposed to building to a knowledge and love of the subject that's a bit unsettling.
And that's the inherent problem with the AP class. We've talked
Mhm.
about this before. The fact that the buildup is towards the exam and not the information itself. And so once the exam is over, you're kind of left just sitting there looking at each other going, well, what next? Now I do a combination of two things, so I'll have the kids suggest maybe a topic they'd like to do a deeper dive into. And then I might also offer a documentary or something like that we can watch and then discuss after we're done with it. So I have a kind of combination of the two. But one of the things it is a drumbeat with me that the students and their efforts in the AP class, it cannot be solely based upon the idea of the test, because it minimizes and marginalizes everything we do leading up to the test. If the test is more important than the information that we're supposedly trying to convey, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot and we're creating the thing that we dislike the most.
Well, you know this, that there are actually students in your class who didn't take the AP test.
Not many this time around,
Right.
Strangely enough, but yes, there's always a few.
That would be a good metric of the quality of the course and the teacher to some extent. But those students do it, and often it's a late call because they take a practice test and I'm on track for a 3, but I'm going to university that only accepts a 5 or a 4.
Right.
And so I'm not going to take the test. I'm not going to have to do all the prep. I'm not going to waste a day in a testing situation. So there's some kind of game time decisions by students, even though they paid for the test. That doesn't matter.
Right.
But it just shows that it's not just about taking the test, but it's about what score you get. It's pretty, again, pragmatic. The kids are saying, I need this score because now they know what schools they're going to. It's been decided.
It's a little bit like, remember the line that Deion Sanders, when he was criticized for not tackling somebody, and he said that he made a business decision. And I think for our students, I think it's a little bit like that. I mean, they'll sit there at the cusp of having to take 3 exams, God forbid, 4 exams, and they sit there and say to themselves, maybe I don't really need to take this one test. Maybe I can go ahead and just skip that. Like you said, they've already paid for it, but that does not seem to be a major inhibitor to dumping out of a test.
That's right. And there's a little bit of stress, testing. And I mean, some of our kids have even more than 4 tests. They have, particularly, I think juniors quite often take more tests than seniors. But
Holy cow, I have a lawnmower coming through here.
You have a what?
I have a lawnmower coming through here. Our neighbor, for reasons passing all understanding, have chosen this particular moment to mow the grass.
Oh.
And it looks like he's doing it. It's not even his son's. Why would you mow the grass if you have kids to do it for you? I thought that's why you have kids, so you can make them do stuff around the house.
Yeah, or you just hire it done like most people in our neighborhoods. Well, you can mute when you're talking. I actually, this is a perfect opportunity for a soliloquy from Herr Dr. Bourgeois for the next 30 minutes. No, I'm glad you announced that the harbinger of spring, as my dad always said when somebody's mowing the lawn, comes out.
Wait, no, I think to go back to the topic, I think the stress makes kids do crazy things. One, they're either making decisions not to take a test that they've already paid for, or maybe just not take it seriously. And then you have the other direction. So I don't know if you remember this. We talked about this at the time, but 4 or 5 years ago, I had a kid who was taking 7 AP classes. And she was setting herself up to take 7 AP tests. And her parents had no problem with this. And the counselors clearly had no backbone to say this is a bad idea type of thing. And so I think we can agree that that's excessive. But you have a lot of kiddos who are a lot of pressure is being applied for them to do well in these exams. And so not only do you have the kids sitting in class for 7-8 hours a day, but you also have parents who are farming their kid out to one tutor or another to then focus on presumably whatever they didn't cover in class. It's a farm system of sorts, and it is huge money.
Oh, we need to get in on that money here, Miller. I would suspect that the content of tutoring often is how to prepare for the test, meaning not history content of, or math content or whatever, as much as testing techniques. There's probably a lot of that, and let's face it, a lot of AP teachers are lacking in that area, though they can teach the subject. So I think there's a place for it. And the other issue often is that that you have tests like for government or economics that are one semester courses. So as a way to get up to speed, if you haven't had something since December, a tutor is a little bit more focused than I know teachers have sessions, but maybe if somebody wants to get a 5, they would put a little more emphasis into tutoring. But I think it's an industry that reflects as much parents' desires as the kids, and the parents have a couple of things. I think it all has to do with college. Number one, they want to get the free college credit. Credit for this is money in the bank. But the other, which I haven't talked about in a little bit, is class ranking. And you don't need to pass the AP test to get the weighted GPA. And so that girl with 5 or 6 or 7 classes is probably in line for valedictorian.
Yeah, and so it brings up issues that we have talked about before, the idea of the importance of GPA, or at least the importance that it occupies in the brains of our kids. I have a world history student, and he told me, and it was, he said, I asked him, I said, because he's trying to figure out how to make an A in the class. And I said, there's various ways to get to that. None of it includes worrying about getting an A. It's about kind of a more of a healthy, kind of a genuine approach to the subject. But
you go home and you find your textbook and you read that joke, right?
Yeah, I'll do anything. But will you study though? And he talked about the fact that, and I don't know whether he was being serious. I did ask him a follow-up. He told me that his identity is very much wrapped into his GPA. I asked him, I said, are you serious about that? And he goes, yes. I said, don't you see that as a problem? He goes, oh yeah. He knows, he recognizes it. It's an issue. And then you think about the add-on to, what they're doing in class, and then they do tutoring, after school for God knows how many hours or what have you.
Right.
I'm just wondering how the tutorials and the way that it's structured, and because listen, I've done tutoring. I did tutoring this year with a student that does not one of my students, but goes to a different school. These things are there. I'm just wondering, how does that fit within our approach about how you approach a class? It's boiling it down to the individual components. It's not taking it holistically, but rather it is, as you said, it's focusing on skills. It's focusing on strategies and things of that nature. And it has more to do with the test than it really has to do with the class.
I think so. Unless, in particular, if it's sort of last minute cramming to get them ready, there's no time to get into content. But there's that kind of tutoring, which is an industry, and I see it as positive, to help students have more confidence. But the other tutor out there is YouTube. I mean, this is what AP high school students do to learn content. They create a flipped classroom for themselves, and if they're preparing for a test, they're not opening up that book as much as we want them to, but they're watching a lot of videos that are pretty targeted to the AP test. I mean, the quality is there, but it calls into question everything that we've discussed about, history, particularly being a reading subject. There's not a lot of reading between test prep, tutors and watching YouTube videos.
Right. Well, I mean, there's two, as far as that goes, I mean, you're spot on. So there's two guys that do it the most. There's a guy named Heimler,
You're
that
giving
has like
a shameless plug for Heimler. Are you working for Heimler here, Miller?
I'm not giving a shameless plug to anybody. I'm just talking about the idea that there are these two guys that tend to occupy my kids' heads more than anything else. This one
Heimler.
guy named Heimler and this one guy named Green. And they basically they spend all their time, they'll sit there and they'll listen to those things on like a constant loop.
Right. Oh, I see it here. I'm looking at it on, yeah. So he actually does videos of himself giving lectures.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like these kind of quick, contained, prepackaged synopsis of different parts of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And my kids have these on like a going, like I said, a continuous loop where they're constantly listening to these things. And on one hand, I sit there and think, what were you doing the previous 7 months that we've been in this class, But there's also this kind of desire, this overwhelming desire to cover all their bases, even if the bases don't need to be covered, even if they happen to know the material, this desire, oh my God, there's something I'm missing. And so I'll have students talk about, I found this PDF online, or I found this video online. I'm like, do you even know who these people are that are making these PDFs or who making these videos or what have you? Now, by all accounts, the two guys that I mentioned, they seem to know what they're doing, so that's fine. But the thing is, my kids are grasping at everything, and there's this desperation that goes into the final preparations before an exam. So this past Thursday, the day before the APUSH exam, I told my students, listen,
AP US History.
Pardon me for the uninitiated who didn't know that expression.
I don't like using those things.
Yes,
it's called World History WAP.
WAP, yeah.
WAP. It's insulting. I don't like it.
Anyway, so I told my kids. My kids were asking me, "What should we do the night before?" I said, "Do nothing." I said, "I would suggest you don't study." I said, if you believe in your process, if you believe in how you have prepared yourself all year long, there is no reason to study the night before, because you either know it or you don't. Now, if you've not done due diligence throughout the course of the year, trying to cram the night before ain't going to help. So it's either not needed or not helpful. And, the psychological evidence suggesting that we tend to forget the last thing that we try to remember. And that's the first thing that we forget. And then you're going to sit there and carry on that blank space in your head to the AP exam. And you think it's going to be productive. And to me, I told the kids, you're going to get more out of it if you just sleep, relax, have a nice meal, talk with your family, reacquaint yourself with your siblings, and then just go to bed early. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads.
Well, all those things are unique and rare. You probably told them to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich too.
They could have.
The same. It
wouldn't have hurt.
Well, I think this is troubling. You said Heimler is his name?
Himmler.
It's Heimler.
I know
but he gives it away, right? So,
yes. It's the same thing with this green guy. It's like
yeah. But as a business model, there's something missing in that. He's giving away his lectures. I hope he sells some other stuff.
He must have something, I assume. I mean,
or he likes to see his
he's
numbers on YouTube. Maybe he gets ads or something.
Well, yeah, he's getting adverts from his YouTube videos because kids are watching the hell out of those things.
Well, yours are.
Yeah, mine is. I assume everyone else is.
Do you feel incompetent, or when they're watching Heimler instead of Miller?
Well, I mean, so I have a set process by which my kids, what they do in class in the 2 or 2.5 weeks before they lead up into the exam. I have a process that where they have kind of a review process. Now, when I hear about kiddos talking about how they're sitting there and just watching these various videos, I do kind of wonder in my head, what am I doing here? I mean,
I was thinking the same. I didn't want to insult you, but Heimler seems to have why do you need all these lectures on the same topic when Heimler apparently is quite brilliant?
quite brilliant and a lot more concise than the muddied waters of your typical AP class, where you have to get a little bit into the minutia. He doesn't have to worry about teaching the minutia because he's being used solely from the purpose of a review paradigm. So he gets to keep it surface level, fun, happy, breezy. I got to sit there and deal with the muck and the mire, and I got to sit there and get into the bits of it. And so, my function and his function are two totally different things. And I usually advise my students. I said, listen, if you're just talking about a review, if you're just talking about an overview of material,
go with Heimler.
Do one of those things, but that's not going to help you as far as the brass tacks of learning a subject or learning how to, or having the information to be able to do well on an exam.
Well, it is troubling, and we're making light of it a little bit, but having this video content paired with the tutoring that we discussed, kind of creates a little bit of a uncertainty for the future of the classroom teacher. And obviously they do so much more, and they're teaching more than that subject, but just on a technical, the technology suddenly does move in, and it makes everything at least partially obsolete.
It does make you wonder if at some point we're not heading to something more akin to the Japanese model. So I don't know if you've ever seen a Japanese history book. Every time I go to a different country, I endeavor to try to find a history book, the likes of which are used actually in the schools.
Okay.
And so I've done 2 exchange trips with kiddos to Japan. And so therefore I've been able to procure a couple of history books.
Did you steal them? Did you steal them from the teacher lounge there?
I most certainly did not steal them.
Because that would be a sign of dishonor for a teacher.
It would be.
To actually steal a textbook.
All the more surprising that you would jump to the conclusion to ask me the question.
So they would just give you a book and say, we'd like to present you with this book.
Well, I mean, they don't make a ceremony out of it, but I do offer to pay for it first. Just that you have a textbook I can buy off you. I mean, something that I can kind of,
And they gave
sometimes
it to
you. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
They took out your checkbook.
Who do I make it out to? Okay. How do you spell that? But no, I mean, so you look at the Japanese history textbooks, it's nothing more than a glorified timeline. It's bullet points. And with all the efforts in this country to politically try to impact history education, both from the left and the right, both of them not qualified to offer any kind of opinion about what I do on a day in and day out basis. Bastards indeed. But it does make me wonder if we're going to get to a point in an effort to try to not be politically provocative, that we're just going to boil down our subject to a collection of facts that have to be memorized with no commentary, analysis, conjecture allowed in any shape, manner, or form. It does make me wonder that we're heading in that direction. And again, we talk about a lot of things which impact the curriculum, not least of which is testing. And we see it, and we've commented on it before. Testing diminishes the curriculum. It boils it down to only the most quote unquote essential elements of a course, and that's all you have to teach.
So let me ask you a broader question about AP, not just history. You could argue that the AP program across the country is a surreptitious form of tracking students. You have students who are on the AP track and we're not allowed to necessarily track, but AP creates this whole school within a school, and it's the same kids in all these AP biology. So that's one thing that it does, kind of an unintended consequence of that. But that aside, because I think a lot of parents and students actually find that desirable to some extent. But what is the greater good, having something like the AP program, or would we be better off scrapping it And when students go to college, they take college courses from professors and get rid of it. And you teach history, but you're not teaching a specific test. Is it too big right now? Should we rethink it?
At this point, it's too big. I mean, there's nothing we can do as far as AP goes. I mean, I think, and certainly nothing in the short term. If the choices are AP or nothing, I think that the quote unquote on level classes are so hampered by many other things, not least of which is an incredibly constrictive curriculum. I think the AP is the better option, if for no other reason but that you have the teachers have, and then ergo the students have a greater range of intellectual freedom. Now, if you get rid of AP, if there's nothing commiserate to it, maybe like an honors or something like that, then I think I'd rather just have the AP classes. If it's the lesser of two, better, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. I mean, who knows what follows AP if it goes away? I think I'd prefer AP at this point. You're not as constricted. The various curriculum guides and things like that relative to AP allow for a lot more exploration than, say, the regular on-level U.S. history class does. And so I think at that point, I think I'd rather take the AP. I'd like to get to a point, though, where we could have a U.S. history class that's not dependent upon an exam. Even the regular classes have a end of course exam because it's U.S. history, and that becomes one of the classes that the kids have to pass in order to be able to graduate. I'd like to be able to teach a U.S. history class without a test associated with it.
Well, imagine teaching a topical course, maybe a more narrow part of history that's not an AP course. It's not the state required course in history, but something of interest to you.
I think it would be a great opportunity to explore things that do not typically get a lot of attention. For example, I think it'd be great to have a Native American history course, simply because, both, at least here in Texas, both the on-level classes and then internationally, the AP curriculum does not lend itself to discussion a lot on Native Americans, except with regards to their conflicts with Americans or before that colonists. The problem is that, I'm reminded of the line, "This is why we can't have nice things." If we had a setup where teachers could go in that direction, there are too many people that would take it politically in unadvisable directions. I've had this conversation. You hear stories all the time about teachers who are fired for saying this thing or that thing in class. Their kids are rolling tape. You get caught. And a lot of these teachers, not all of them, a lot of these teachers have felt that they take it upon themselves, that it's their responsibility to make sure that their kids think just like they do politically, instead of making their class political, but from their perspective, apolitical. Teacher has no business talking about their own political points of view, but it is certainly the purview of history teachers to discuss politics. I just worry that if it were left up to us on our own wishes to create something, I just worry what some people might create. There would have to be some pretty strict guidelines as far as how that, unfolds.
Well, that's I think it's another topic, but I think it's instructive because there was a time, when teachers could do that and they would propose something, and it wouldn't take 4 years to get through all the committees, and there would be no question about politics one way or the other. It's about the content and the syllabus and what students were reading. But it's a tough point, actually, a real depressing way to close out our topic on and I blame you for this because we were having a
Listen, I had the
it was
peanut
a
butter and
pot.
jelly sandwich. I was
Yeah,
fine.
but it
You
was
got negative.
positive, and now you're saying that we're so political we can't teachers can't be trusted. They'll end up they'll be fired one after the other. It would be this barrage of firings. Students recording, post it to the internet, and then suddenly fired.
Exactly.
Because of you personally. The way I don't know.
I have nothing to do with this. I merely call it as I see it. The political landscape lays before me. I observe with the observational skills of not so much a lesser man, and I sit there and say, "This isn't going to work." So don't blame me.
I wouldn't blame you. You're just like
you know what you're like. You know what you're like. You're just like the Israelites of old, yelling at the prophet,
what,
bringing up bad news. Why are you coming in here weighing us down with your negativity,
I feel
Mr.
like you're
Prophet?
shouting at me. You're calling me a prophet, or you're the
No,
prophet.
I'm the prophet. I'm the prophet. I'm also the Jew here, so I'm the prophet.
Oh my gosh!
And so there you go.
It's gotten really strange.
That's my fault.
Enjoy playing your videos from the History Channel as you close out the year, Miller.
Not from the History Channel. And remember, we do a mixture of things. You can't pigeonhole us.
Well,
all right. Well, with that, as this thing peters out, we ask that you say adieu, farewell, so long, auf Wiedersehen, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
I'll say auf Wiedersehen and leave it at that. Here, Miller.